Anyways, I was looking at this article about awe, and thought of when I go out in nature, that's oftentimes when I feel awe. And just like um you just have a sense that something's bigger than yourself, and then you don't feel too important, and then you end up like taking care of it. Like there's never been a time when I've been in Tahoe and I'm like, oh, let me just throw this trash on the ground, because it's so beautiful that you don't want to do
Mhm.
that. You want to conserve it.
The
And
mo-
the last thing, but I just like love this quote so much, the one by Gandhi. It's when I despair, remember that all through history, the way of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they can seem invincible, but in the end, they always fail. Think of it always. I guess I thought of that a lot just with what has been happening, you know, this past week and a half. And it's like just to have that hope that, things don't look so great, but those things will eventually fall. I guess it kind of gives me hope.
So I really like that Gandhi quote. I had never heard of that. That's kind of a nice, hopeful sort of way to try and reframe it. Just because it sort of feels dire right now and feels untrue doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be that way.
And I think also like inherit the earth. I was doing some looking around, and it doesn't necessarily mean like you inherit the physical earth, but it's more about like you inherit joy, you inherit peacefulness, you inherit like contentment. And if you look at people that are gentle and humble, I feel like they do have more contentment, they do have more joy, they are more peaceful. And you can be a person that strives a lot and has a lot of power, but are you really happy in your life? That kind of thing too. And when I looked up stuff about awe, there was a research study that showed that usually people of a lower socioeconomic status experience awe more often. So that's kind of like, you're from a more humble place. And so you can kind of take in things and really notice them, like nature or things
Mhm.
like that.
I think when I think of inheritance, like as far as when we're talking about like a biblical connotation, where I always think of like the prodigal son, right? There's always that story that, he kind of like, give me my share and then I'm going to do what I will with it. And then he comes back because he like blows it off, right? And I feel like maybe that's what the mindset is. It's like, well, we're going to get it anyway. So we're going to do what we will with it without presumably any consequence. But then the consequence, unfortunately, is going to fall on the next generation, which is very troubling.
Mason, when you were talking about awe the first time, it reminded me of what some of the kids were saying in chapel the other day when they were talking about gratitude. And I don't quite remember the prompt, but I know Chaplain Hull was asking them to sort of reflect on gratitude. And I don't know, there was a thought in my head where you were talking about awe. And to me, awe is connected to gratitude. If I feel awe of something, unless it's something, I guess you could be awed by something that's terrifying, but generally when I think of being awed, it's like a sunrise or, beautiful mountains, it's being outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's connected to a sense of gratitude, which sort of just reminded me of what some of the kids were saying about how gratitude is a mindset, almost that you choose, and that it can affect your mental and physical state almost.
Definitely. For me going out bird watching, there's a kind of maybe a step removed, but the like the always being in apprentice mode kind of thing, where you're not ever an expert, and the more you learn, the more you realize, wow, there's so much more to learn. And it's that, I definitely feel that the sense of awe and wonder at having a moment where you happen to see a particular behavior, or it may be a new species, and yeah, it's I don't know, definitely makes me feel both connected, and that sense of gratitude for having the chance to have those experiences.
Yeah, I think it comes from a level of humility and just, looking for the beauty in other things instead of just centering it on yourself. And I think as a whole, like if we could do that as a world, our earth would just be in such a better place.